Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the day that the Lord has made. We are rejoicing and we're glad in it. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Ramon Preston Show. If you are coming on, joining us live on this beautiful Tuesday, I want you to hit the like button, hit the share button, tag Lolly Dolly, everybody, and let them know that your boy, Ramon Preston, my squad, we are all live right here in the beautiful Buckhead community of Atlanta. And you, my friend, are watching the Ramon Preston Show. Today is Tuesday, March the 25th, 2025. We are live, and today's show we're going to be talking about how you need to position yourself mentally, how you need to position yourself, in my estimation, spiritually, and how you need to position yourself economically to make the wealth decision. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Making the wealth decision. And in order for you to make the wealth decision, there has to be a positioning or repositioning spiritually, mentally, and economically. That's in my own personal estimation. So again, welcome to the Ramon Preston Show. Please, if you would be so kind, put in the comments what city, what state you are watching the Ramon Preston Show from. I would love to know. Just put in the comments where you're watching the Ramon Preston Show from. I want to say thank you to all of you who are followers on our social media channel. Those of you that have subscribed to our YouTube page, thank you so very much. People like you, followers, subscribers, family members, friends, you're the ones who motivate us to show up every day on this live show and share information with you. So thank you so very kindly. We really appreciate you supporting the show, supporting the movement. I believe God has given me, my wife, our team, our company. I believe God has given us a responsibility to communicate information to our people on biblical economics. I'm a pastorpreneur. I've been a pastor, preacher, minister, entrepreneur for almost 25 years, well over 2 decades. And that's been my ministry. It's been my mission, at least for the last several years, to take the things that I've learned as a pastorpreneur and to communicate them to my community, because I believe that one of the responsibilities we have, especially as believers on this planet, I believe that one of the responsibilities we have is to build wealth. You might feel different about it, but if you are a believer and you read the Bible and you understand the things of God, there's no reason why you don't understand the importance of building wealth, not just for you, not just for your family, but building wealth to be able to be a blessing to your church, your community, and to be able to be a blessing to the world. So today we want to talk about how you need to position yourself spiritually, how you need to position yourself economically, how you need to position yourself mentally to make the wealth decision. So now, when you are making the wealth decision, what exactly are you doing? What are you doing when you're making the wealth decision? Well, first and foremost, when you're making the wealth decision, what you are essentially doing is deciding that it is the God-given purpose for your life to pursue wealth. It's just as simple as that. Because if you don't connect and associate your pursuit of wealth with some God-given assignment, if you do not connect the dots between you wanting to be wealthy and God giving you the ability to be wealthy, if you don't connect those dots, no matter how much you try to economically position yourself, no matter how much you try to mentally position yourself, that spiritual dynamic has to be in play. Okay? So you got to be able to connect those dots spiritually. In other words, when you make the wealth decision, and I want you to hear me on this, when you make the wealth decision, when you make the decision to be wealthy, to have financial freedom, to get that bag, however you want to slice it or dice it, when you make the decision to live a quality of life and to be a blessing to your family and to your church and your community and the world, when you make the wealth decision, what you are doing is you're making a spiritual decision. Okay? So I really want you to understand that. Making the wealth decision is essentially you making a spiritual decision. And that spiritual decision is that you believe being wealthy is a part of your God-given purpose. Now, we might not have a lot of time on today's show, but we got enough time for you to process what I'm saying and to settle it in your heart that making the decision to be wealthy is spiritual. Okay? Making the decision to be wealthy is spiritual. So making the wealth decision, it is, number one, a spiritual decision that you're making. You are coming to the conclusion that for me to be wealthy is a spiritual dynamic. It is also an economical decision. It is very economical of me to be wealthy, because when you look at economics from a general perspective, economics is about stabilizing your household. When the economy of your life is stable, you are producing and providing wealth for your family. When you make the wealth decision, you are also mentally deciding that money isn't good or bad inherently, okay? I want you to understand that. When you make the wealth decision, you're making a spiritual decision, number one, that this is a God-given purpose for me. When you make the wealth decision, you're making an economical decision. It is to the best interest of my family, my household, my legacy for me to be wealthy. And when you make the wealth decision, you're making a mental decision. It is me mentally agreeing with the fact that money isn't inherently good or bad, because it's what I do with the money that makes the money good or bad. And you're also making the decision that when you have more money, you have more options. I think we can all agree on that. When you have more money, you have more options. Okay, so that's the foundation of what I wanted to talk about today in terms of you making the wealth decision. When you make the wealth decision, it is spiritual. Okay, it is spiritual, and I think this is one of the secret sauces to my consistency in wealth building, because I have this spiritual belief that getting wealthy is a part of my God-given purpose. I have this belief that getting wealthy is a spiritual decision. It is a spiritual dynamic. It is a spiritual phenomena. It ain't just some money decision that I'm making. It ain't me just conjuring up this idea to have more money because I want to be selfish and I want to flaunt and flex and I want to have a bigger ego. I'm understanding that the wealth decision for me is spiritual. This is a part of my spiritual purpose on this planet. This is a part of my spiritual assignment on this planet for myself, for my family, for my church, for my community, for the world, for my legacy. Okay? And I'm also making the wealth decision because I get it, that it is an economic decision. And again, the basis of economics is my household. I'm taking responsibility for my family. I'm taking responsibility for my legacy. Now, I'm not saying that if you don't have wealth, that you're not at least intentional about being responsible for your family. But what I am saying is, if you don't have wealth and you don't have a desire to pursue wealth as a spiritual pursuit, then you're missing out on an opportunity to bring stability to your economy or to your household. And when I make the wealth decision, I am mentally agreeing that ain't nothing evil about money. Okay? Money is not inherently good or bad. Money is good or bad based on the person who has it. Okay? So if I'm an evil person with money, then the money that I have ain't evil. I'm evil. If I'm a good person with money, the money that I have is not good. I'm good because of what I'm doing with the money is a reflection of who I am. Does that make sense? And so the foundation of making the wealth decision is about making a decision that you understand is a spiritual decision, an economical decision, and it is a mental decision. Now, the next point I want to make is this. Once you make the wealth decision, okay, once you decide that this is a spiritual thing, this is an economic thing, this is a mental thing, once you make that wealth decision, you now have to commit. You now have to commit to certain things once you make the wealth decision. So I want you to understand this. Sometimes when you are not committed to doing what is necessary to become wealthy, to be financially free, when you're not committed to it, it's probably because you haven't made that deeper decision. Okay? Because when you believe something you're doing is spiritual, is economical, it is mental, it plays into your relationship with God, your purpose on this earth, your responsibility to your family, your state of being. When you're making a decision to do things, and those things that you're doing are based on that deeper decision, you ain't gonna just flip and flop with those things. You're gonna be more committed, more consistent. You're gonna be willing to take more risk because you understand, no, this is bigger than just me getting up today and going to chase money, right? And a lot of people get that confused because they look at us and they say, why y'all always talking about money? Why y'all always chasing after this bag? Why y'all always talking about hustling and grinding and getting it and moving and shaking? You know why? Because we've made the decision. We've made the wealth decision. And for us, the wealth decision is a spiritual decision. It is a spiritual decision to fulfill a God-given purpose. It is a spiritual decision to do what we believe God has put us on this planet to do, at least in this area. It is an economic decision to take responsibility for our families and to be the breadwinner and to make sure that our family doesn't have to live in a perpetual cycle of poverty. It is a mental decision that puts me in a state of mind, in a state of being to not allow myself to fall victim to any situation or circumstance that is below my standard of wealth building, okay? And so once you make the wealth decision, I hope you're tracking me on this. Once you make the wealth decision, you then have to commit to certain practices. You have to commit to certain practices. All right? So the wealth decision, let me write it down so you can screenshot it. So you could get it. The wealth decision, it equals a spiritual economical and mental decision. And once I make the wealth decision, which I understand to be a spiritual decision, economical decision, and mental decision, I now have to commit to, at minimum, I have to commit to practicing stewardship. I want you to write this down because this is so important. Stewardship, strategies, and I've got to commit to putting to practice and implementing systems. And I think this is where a lot of people who finally get to a point to where they make the wealth decision, I think this is where a lot of people fall off at. So for example, most people never make the wealth decision. Most people never look at building wealth as a spiritual dynamic. Most people never get there. So they are void of this internal divine strength. They never connect the dots. Somebody told me this the other day, and when they told me, I was like, wow, that's powerful. They said it wasn't until they started listening to me. Somebody just told me this the other day. They said, it wasn't until I started listening to you that I realized business, finances, money, wealth building, investing, all these things, they didn't realize until they started listening to me that those things are supposed to be connected to ministry, not separate from ministry. They thought that when you're doing business, when you talking about money, when you grinding and working and hustling and doing all those things, they should all be separate from your church life, your spiritual life. When the truth is, pursuing money, business, success, wealth building, those things should be viewed as spiritual. They should be a part of your spiritual duty. They should be a part of your spiritual responsibility. So many people miss that. Because if you believed that wealth was spiritual, if you really believed that wealth was a part of your spiritual duty, you would be looking at wealth differently. You would be thinking about wealth differently. You would be pursuing wealth differently. So for those of you who are people of faith, if you are a Christian, you are a believer, you are a churchgoer, do you believe that prayer is spiritual? I'm asking you a question in real life. Those of you that are believers, do you believe that prayer is spiritual? Do you believe prayer is spiritual? Do you believe reading the Bible is spiritual? Do you believe that fasting is spiritual? Do you believe having a relationship with God and participating in devotion and singing church songs and praise and worship? Do you believe any of this stuff is spiritual? Well, guess what? If you believe those things are spiritual, you've got to allow yourself to move over into this vein to believe that building wealth and making a decision to be wealthy, to be financially free, to have stability, you got to start believing that it is just as spiritual for you to do that as it is for you to pray and fast and go to church and quote scriptures and serve the community and be a humanitarian and give to charity. It's all spiritual. Okay? It's all spiritual. So when you make the wealth decision a spiritual decision and an economical decision, economics means you are making a decision to be wealthy because it is spiritual, it is economical, meaning that it is your responsibility. If you look up the word economy, the word is tied to a household. It carries with it the idea of having stability in your home. So when you make a wealth decision that you believe is economical, you're making a wealth decision because you believe the family stability and security depends on you having that. So when I look at the things that I do every day as an entrepreneur, as a go-getter, as a grinder, as a hustler, I look at them as spiritual things and economic things that God wants me to do, that God has given me the strength to do, that God has made as a part of my purpose on this planet. And it's also economic, meaning that my family's life depends on it. So now I'm not going to give up and stop moving forward when I know my family depend on me. I'm not going to just stand in front of my family and say, I ain't going to do this. So now my brain is wired to believe that pursuing wealth is spiritual, is economic, and then is mental. So now I have this mindset, this state of being that drives me every day to pursue this thing called wealth. And I make the decision and I don't back off from that. I make it and I stick with it. Okay? Now, once that decision is made and I understand the spiritual, the economical, the mental, I now have to commit to doing certain things. I got to commit to doing certain things. Okay, so hopefully you're writing this down or you're doing a screenshot to take notes because I'm giving you some real game. Okay, so if I'm committed to stewardship, if I'm committed to strategies, if I'm committed to systems, what am I actually committed to? Well, stewardship is about accountability. It's about consistency. If you are committed to being a steward, every day you wake up, you're going to do something to show yourself accountable, to prove your consistency. Okay? You're gonna figure out new ways to make money, new ways to grow as a person, new ways to get an opportunity. You're never going to allow people, places, and things to stop you because you are a steward. What are you a steward over? You're a steward over this decision that you made, this spiritual decision, this economic decision, this mental decision. You become a steward over that. So if you've made the wealth decision and you know that it is a decision that you have to pursue because it's spiritual, economic, and mental, now you need to get committed to stewardship. Get committed to stewardship. So now you need to be held accountable. That may mean you got to surround yourself with people who going to hold you accountable. If you're not surrounded by people who can hold you accountable, can't nobody tell you what to do, can't nobody correct you and check you. You just a freelancer, you live off the grid, you live how you want to live. Most likely you're probably not that successful because at some point you have to be held accountable. There needs to be some level of accountability that you operate by, okay? There has to be some level, of accountability that you operate by. Shout out to DL. I see your question. You said, what is your definition of a media company? What does it sell? and to whom and at what price? Well, my definition of a media company is what I'm doing here. This is media. So a media company can be a lot of different versions of things. A media company can be a company that communicates information. It can communicate educational information. It can communicate entertainment. It could be different versions of communication, but media at its core is the communication of information. You are sharing information, you are communicating it, you're disseminating it. So my definition of a media company would be what I do. So the Ramon Preston Show is a part of our media company. When we post content on social media, a part of our media distribution is also the emails. So gathering data from potential clients and customers, their names, their numbers, their email addresses. That's a part of our media company. So we have a media company that's made up of content creation. It's made up of email distribution and different ways to get in front of the right people who could potentially do business with us. So I think just at its core, that's what a media company is. A company that communicates information. Now, you don't necessarily have to create the information to communicate. So for example, if you look at TV, some of the information that news channels communicate, these are media companies. They're not creating it or originating it. They're just sharing it based on events that happens. And then you have some media companies that actually produce the content. Okay? But it's still media. It's just different forms of media. So I think you got to decide what form of media works for you and what are the channels of distribution or communication work best. Because it could be in today's world, podcasts, it could be YouTube channels, it could be TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, a version of all of those. It could be traditional TV, radio, it could be flyers and postcards and emails. All of that in and of itself is media, okay? And then you say, what does it sell? A lot of media companies just sell information. They sell entertainment. They sell the dream. They sell ideas. So the media companies on commercials, they sell stories, right? So when you watch a 30-second commercial, that commercial was produced and put together by a media company, right? And they had to craft a story. Even if, let's say, if one of the Fortune 500 companies want to run an ad for the Super Bowl, they might not even have a media department that does it. They may hire and outsource it to a media company. And what is that media company going to do? Going to listen to what they want to do, and they're going to understand what platform they're going to be using for that Super Bowl commercial, and they're going to put a story together and content together to reflect what needs to be distributed and disseminated. So a media company is selling those types of things. You're selling dreams. You're selling ideas. You're selling information. You're selling the opportunity. Sometimes people are watching stuff on TV that media companies or on social media that media companies produce, and they're just producing the idea for somebody like me to look at. I'm just buying into the idea, okay? And then your other question was, whom? You said what does it sell to or whom and at what price? I think the price is subjective. The price is subjective. So price is really a myth. So you put a price on what you're selling based on your perceived value, but people are only going to pay what they believe it's worth anyway, unless you sell them on some dream or some idea that's bigger than what the price is. So all that is just subjective to what you put together. Okay, so I hope I answered that. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about making the wealth decision. It is a spiritual decision. It is an economic decision. It is a mental decision. Once you make that wealth decision and you understand those dynamics, you then commit to stewardship, strategies, and systems. Okay? You have to commit to that. You have to commit to that. And when you're committed to stewardship, you're committed to accountability. You're committed to consistency. When you commit to strategies, you're really committing to becoming more educated and informed on the things relating to wealth. So that means you got to learn more about money. You got to learn more about business, learn more about investing. And then the systems are going to become the actual vehicles and mechanisms that you're going to be using to practice what you learned when it comes to strategies and to fulfill your consistent levels of accountability. So it all works together. I hope today's show at least set a standard for you to see that making a wealth decision is deeper than just you saying, man, I need a couple dollars. I need some money. I can't wait till I come up. That ain't really making a wealth decision. Or making a wealth decision is not just you dwelling on what you went through in your past and all the stuff that you got going on. Making the wealth decision is about projecting yourself into the future and committing to becoming a steward, becoming accountable, becoming consistent in the things that you know are true. I know, whether I got money or not, that building wealth is spiritual. Building wealth is economical. Building wealth is mental. And once I adopt that mentality and I take responsibility for my family and I associate it to my God-given purpose, I'm going to make a commitment and I'm not letting up off that commitment. I'm not taking my feet off the gas. And I'm going to surround myself with people as a good steward who going to hold me accountable to that. That's why I always talk about the stuff that I'm doing, that I'm committing to do, because I'm going to hold myself to it. And I want to be held to the highest level of accountability. And then I'm going to learn and educate myself on the ways that I can do it. And then I'm going to find the vehicles and mechanisms to actually get it done. So thank you for joining today's show. I hope it was educational for you. I hope it opened your mind up to the endless possibilities of wealth building. And if you need help, if you need assistance, if you need to speak with one of our relationship managers here, we have a team of people who are committed to helping you put a plan together for your finances, for your business, and for your investment so that you can build the wealth you've made a decision and a commitment to build. So if you need any advisory services, we offer them as a complimentary service here at RP Capital LLC. This is our private equity firm. We work with clients and investors and partners on a regular basis. We help them to craft the right financial plan, business plan, and investment plan. All you have to do is click the link in the description, and that link will prompt you to our advisory assessment form. You can actually go to rpcapitalfirm.com/advisors, and there's a form. If you click the link and go to that page, there's an advisory assessment form. You're able to complete that form and literally put into that form the areas that you would like advisory support on, whether it's your finances, your business, your investments, or all three. And then once you submit that form, my team will reach out to you and we will help you craft a plan, a strategy. We will show you what systems you need, and we're willing to walk you through that process so that you can also be a good steward and have the accountability that you need to get to that place of wealth. So click the link in the description. There's also 2 numbers that you can call, and my team is available to answer any questions you may have so that we can help you get to where you want to go. So thank you all for joining the show today. I love y'all. Appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow, same place, same time, 12 o'clock noon, right here on the Ramon Preston Show. Until tomorrow, have an amazing rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you